He padded over dry needles and brown leaves, to the edge of the wood where the pines grew thin. Beyond the open fields he could see the great piles of man rock, stark against the swirling flames. The wind blew hot and rich with the smell of blood and burnt meat, so strong he began to slaver. Yet as one smell drew them onwards, others warned them back. He sniffed at the drifting smoke. Men, many men, many horses and fire, fire, fire. No smell was more dangerous. Not even the hard, cold smell of iron, the stuff of man claws and hard skin. The smoke and ash clouded his eyes, and in the sky he saw a great winged snake, whose roar was a river of flame. Bran 7, A Clash of Kings.
At the end of A Clash of Kings, after Ramsay Snow defeats the Stark forces, slaughters Theon's men and burns Winterfell, Bran, walking in Sutter's skin, watches on. It was at night, though alight with flames and choked with smoke. In the sky the direwolf describes a dragon, a great winged snake whose roar was a river of flame. This, however, clashes with the explanation and understanding that the only dragons alive in the story were Daenerys' 3, that all the other dragons had gone extinct. So let's examine where the 4th dragon could have possibly come from, or is it even real?
Some detractors of the theory suggest the dragon was a thing of smoke, in a garbled recollection of the quote. Granted, some, observing the burning of Winterfell, had their eyes stung by smoke and ash. However, they looked up and saw the great winged snake. It was roaring flame. Clearly not just an apparition in the smoke. Behind the cliffs there were also tall fires. Which cliffs, I wonder? Or are there even cliffs nearby? The geography around Winterfell is forests and open plains, though some maps show small hills. So when the direwolf thinks of cliffs, is it thinking, in fact, of the stone walls of Winterfell itself, 80 or 100 feet high? Later that night there is a crash, perhaps a dragon landing, accompanied by a roar, which startles men and horses. Ramsay had 600 soldiers with him. How could they all miss sighting a dragon, let alone never mention it? None such appears in the Theon chapters of A Dance with Dragons. An inexperienced Drogon in the lands around Wherein left burnt sheep carcasses, and was the terror of many a farmer, though no mention of that arises. But perhaps we underestimate how sneaky a dragon can be. This seems to be the opinion of King Jaehaerys the Conciliator and his Master of Coin. However, we should remember that Balerion evaded detection for over a year, possibly by hiding where no one would dare go, and Vhagar, ridden by Aemond, couldn't be found in the Riverlands until they wanted to be found. Older, more experienced dragons are more crafty, as their intelligence rivals humans. An alternative proposed is the dragon is merely a metaphor for the conflict to come. Some lazy foreshadowing on the part of an otherwise highly detailed author, who occasionally makes mistakes, I'll admit, but for the most part has painstakingly well thought through work. Metaphors and other literary devices are meat and mead in fiction. A proficient author is using most elements of a plot to convey some opinion on the real world. The dragons and their bond with the Targaryens, or those with king's blood, are very much like the notion of divine right in the perceived world we have lived in, and to some extent raw military power. Royal blood, as a requirement to rule, creates stratification in the social hierarchy. Its benefit is that by denying the democratization of rulership, it restricts the number of candidates for the throne, which reduces the likelihood of wars to claim the throne from outside sources. The downside is that competent talent from outside the royal line has no chance of claiming the throne, and lacking in competition, the incumbent dynasty becomes soft and decadent. My point is, events that appear in the novels can be metaphors for aspects of the apparent reality we live in. but remain literal truth within the plot itself. Literal literature. The last counter-argument against the existence of the fourth dragon tends to boil down to Bloodraven and the children of the forest put this hallucination into Bran's warging experience to warn Bran of the future. If magic is involved, all bets of a reasonable explanation are off. Still, it must be asked, can a direwolf think in metaphors? Earlier in A Clash of Kings, we get this dialogue from Sandor the Hound Clegane. A hound will die for you, but never lie to you, and he will look you straight in the face. Sansa 2, A Clash of Kings. His opinion, and perhaps through this character the authors, is that the dogs, and possibly other canids, aren't the type of animal to lie or deceive, unlike certain feathered avian life forms. The three-eyed raven might speak in dreams and metaphors, but the dog will not. Direwolves are no ordinary wolves, to be fair, and they are certainly not dogs, as we have been reminded often. This difference is mainly in that a dog you may treat like a slave, but a direwolf is a wild creature. You might wed one, but you may never own one. This is not the only time in the story that the abstract thinking abilities of a direwolf has been brought into question. He found Ghost atop the hill, as he thought he might. The white wolf never howled, yet something drew him to the heights all the same, and he was squat there on his hindquarters, hot breath rising in a white mist as his red eyes drank the stars. Do you have a name for them as well? Jon asked, as he went to one knee beside the direwolf and scratched the thick white fur on his neck. The hare, the doe, the she-wolf. Jon 3, A Storm of Swords. In the prologue of A Dance with the Dragons, we are gifted with the point of view of Varamir Sixskins, an experienced warg. Having fled from Stannis' attack on the wildling camp, he is wounded, mostly abandoned, unrecognised and dying. Through this character's perspective, we get insight into the ways of wargs. And, as he is skin-changing into his wolves, who remain loyal to him after his other animals have died or abandoned him, we see from a wolf's perspective. A man alone is a feeble thing, big and strong with good sharp eyes, but dull of ear and deaf to smells. Deer and elk and even hares were faster, bears and boars fearsome to fight, but men in packs were dangerous. As the wolves closed on their prey, the warg heard the wailing of a pup, the crust of last night's snow breaking under clumsy man paws, the rattle of hard skins and long grey claws men carried. Swords, a voice whispered inside him. Spears. Prologue, A Dance of Dragons. Hardskin being armour and clothing, the long grey claws being spears and swords. A baby is a pup. The wolf stalker describes these implements of humankind in terms it can understand. Animal things, not unnatural implements. Varamir's voice explains it to the wolf, almost in the background. And as the quote in the beginning shows, the direwolf, Summer, describes swords and armour with the same terminology. The walls of Winterfell are cliffs. And again you may argue that Bloodraven or some other skin changer is meddling with Bran's visions. However, a warg can seemingly sense another inside an animal. And when sharing a mind, two wargs will struggle against each other when inhabiting the single familiar, as Varamir did with Hagon and Orell. Though perhaps Bloodraven is more subtle, or Bran too inexperienced. However, Bran did almost immediately pick up on the remnant of Varamir's consciousness in Old One Eye later in Dance with Dragons, with no real training. So I propose that when a direwolf happens to see a great winged serpent flying overhead and whose roar is a river of flame, what that direwolf is showing is exactly what it describes, a dragon. But how would this be possible? How can there be another dragon? Find out next time.